I'm Nicholas Thompson. You're listening to The Most Interesting Thing in AI, a podcast produced by Atlantic Rethink, the Atlantic's creative marketing studio, in collaboration with PwC, a leader in helping organizations use AI. In each episode, we're exploring how artificial intelligence is reshaping our lives and redefining what's possible. Today's guest is Eva Galperin, a leading advocate for digital privacy and the director of cybersecurity at the Electronic Frontier Foundation. The Electronic Frontier Foundation is a pioneering nonprofit that has sued everyone from Apple to the NSA as part of their mission to promote privacy and free speech on the internet. Galperin is a leader of the EFF's Threat Lab, which focuses on identifying and combating digital threats aimed at activists, journalists, and vulnerable populations. She's also the co-founder of the Coalition Against Stalkerware, helping to quell the rise of malicious tracking software. Today, she continues her research and advocacy, particularly in the areas of state-sponsored surveillance and the emerging risks posed by artificial intelligence. One of my great personal interests is the risk posed by AI deepfakes. The ability of AI to produce propaganda at scale has the potential to sway elections and disrupt democracy. On the personal level, AI has been used by scammers to clone voices and pull off other kinds of deceitful impersonations, leading to identity theft and much worse. The existential danger looming over all of this is an information ecosystem where no one can be certain if a video, photograph, or online personality is real. I was excited to talk to Eva about the evolution of AI fakery and to get her perspective on what tools, laws, and practices we can employ to stop it, or at least curtail it. Let's get started. Eva, it's a great pleasure to have you here. Thanks for joining.
Thanks for having me.
First question I want to ask you, tell me a little bit about your childhood and what led you to become an expert in cybersecurity and privacy.
This is always the funniest question because it's essentially, why are you like this? And how did you wind up becoming this talking dog? So I was born in the Soviet Union and I grew up in the United States. Sort of the founding myth of my childhood was that we had all escaped from an authoritarian country and come to the United States, which is not an authoritarian country. And one of the things that my parents really impressed upon me when I was growing up was the power of technology to protect people, to empower people, to create privacy, but also the power of technology to create an authoritarian state that listens to everybody all the time and causes people not to trust one another. That was part of how I got interested in sort of human rights and technology.
One of the things that most interests me right now is the question of whether we're moving into a world where we'll be able to tell what's real, what's fake, what's not fake, whether we'll be able to trust images, whether there will be ground truth. And you, of course, are an expert in so many elements of this particular question. But let me start with this. To what degree is artificial intelligence accelerating the creation of deepfakes, the creation of so much of this misinformation that you track as part of your work?
People tend to overblow the achievements of AI, sometimes in order to imply that they have done more than they actually have. But also, opponents of AI tend to kind of overblow what we have achieved and where this is all going, sometimes for the purpose of scaring us, sometimes kind of for doomerism, but sometimes also to spur us into action. And then finally, there are the people who massively overblow it because they're looking for that sweet, sweet VC money. I am none of these things. I try to keep myself as a sort of AI realist, very focused on what AI has actually achieved and not what they're promising us and not what they're doing under sort of the best demo conditions. And what we have right now is a situation where AI can produce video, produce images, also audio. These things can be convincing to a person who is not paying very close attention, or if you have time to doctor them afterwards. Those are sort of your two situations in which your AI product is going to get away with it. For text, you can produce convincing interactive text for a certain amount of time for a person who is not paying a lot of attention. For a person who is paying attention, who is motivated, who is actually curious as to whether or not the person they're talking to is a real person, it becomes clear that they are not a person real quick as soon as you start asking them for recipes for brownies. So we have mixed results right now. The biggest problem is that even though we have text and images and video, which is not entirely convincing, because it is not entirely convincing only to people who are paying attention, it is convincing to people who are not paying attention or people who are highly motivated to believe what they are seeing.
Let's go to how convincing images are. What are the tells that you look for in images and videos that very quickly reveal that something has been AI generated?
The finger thing happens, hair, inconsistent earlobes. How many legs does it have? Where are those legs located? What are its arms doing? I've tried to remember who it was that said that recognizing AI-generated images turned out to be a lot like recognizing the Fae. You just look for the things which are uncanny. On one hand, yes, there are tells. Yes, the tells are going to become, sort of harder and harder to identify. They are going to change over time. But I don't think we're ever going to end up in a situation where the images have no tells at all.
Really? You think that even in 5 years, 10 years, there will still be tells?
I think that in 5 or 10 years, there will still be tells, especially for images that are generated quickly and with very little input.
So you don't think AI is going to fundamentally change the number of deepfakes that exist, or the convincingness of them, or the number of fake videos that are used to try to influence politics?
It's not that I don't think it's going to change the number. The number is absolutely going to go up because they're extremely easy to produce. I think that the core danger of deepfakes is actually frequently misunderstood. People think that the core danger of deepfakes is that we will no longer be able to tell what reality is because we will be able to create video and images that are indistinguishable from reality. And I would say that the core danger of deepfakes is not that we will have images that are indistinguishable from reality, but that people simply will not care and will no longer believe in base reality if it does not line up with their pre-existing beliefs.
What do you think that AI companies should do to lessen this problem in the future? Do you believe in building, for example, watermarking software, or building in very sophisticated patterns that can't be uncovered by people observing them, but if you do a reverse analysis of the text, you'd be able to determine what was made by an AI, or at least have a clue? Do you believe that those solutions have any value?
Potentially, yes. It is all about where the rubber meets the road. And I think that once you start having a company that starts watermarking its products or its output, there is a very good chance that its rivals will turn right around and say, our products are not watermarked, and that is somehow an advantage.
Do you see any technical solutions that you propose? Are there any industry standards? Are there any laws? Are there any policies? Some people have proposed that platforms should mandate that everyone prove that they are human.
No. That is, in fact, a terrible idea.
Explain its terribleness, please.
How are you going to prove that somebody is a human? Are you going to ask them to send in a government-issued ID? What ID are you going to ask for? What ID cannot be doctored that you can trust? How are you going to store this ID? What are you going to do when all of this extremely sensitive information is breached by a hacker and leaked to the public, or simply sold to criminals who then use it to target your users? This is also a good way to essentially chill the speech of anyone who needs to speak anonymously in order to be heard, and those are overwhelmingly marginalized people all over the world.
There are some more sophisticated versions of how this could be done. I'm sure you've read the recent papers on personhood credentials, and the idea being that essentially you take some of the logic of PGP, verify your identity with a government agency, which already has verification of your identity. The information is stored in such a way that the platform that is checking in on your personhood credentials doesn't actually get to see the credential. They just get to see whether your public key matches a private key in a database, which would be probably the most privacy protecting way to do this verification. If that can be executed, does it satisfy the critique you just gave, or is it just impossible to do this in a way that is safe and secure?
It is impossible to do this in a way that is safe and secure, and you are also limiting users to people who have valid government credentials, which not everybody does. Even if you're like, well, show me your driver's license. Not everybody has a driver's license. Show me your passport. 50% of Americans don't have a passport. The question of what kind of government credentials you have also doesn't scale to the rest of the world. What are you going to do if you are, say, a refugee in Gaza right now with almost no internet and all of your credentials have been destroyed. Do you suddenly not get the right to speak on platforms anymore? That seems like a very bad idea.
I assume you do not like the iris scanning technology that has been proposed by some of the folks in AI.
Not everybody has an iris. If you're talking about billions of people, you need to think about your edge cases, and you can't just shrug and decide that your edge cases don't get to speak online. The second problem is that, all right, so now you have a database of everybody's irises, which links them to all of their social media platforms and all of their speech online. That is an extremely tempting target for hackers. So once your iris database is breached and leaked, what are people going to do? Get new eyeballs?
Let's talk a little bit about scams and fraud. Do you think that AI has been a net positive for scammers trying to extract money, extract other things from individuals?
I think that AI has certainly been used by scammers and grifters in order to try to scam individuals. And we are seeing it used more often, more broadly, and really quite inventively. I don't know if I would describe it as a net positive, but they're sure using it.
What is the most outrageous example you've seen or the most interesting story you've heard about how someone was scammed that listeners won't have heard before?
I'm not sure that I have anything particularly new and outrageous. If anything, the saddest thing about scams is how common they are and how any of us can fall for them under the right circumstances. It happened to my coworker, Cory Doctorow. So Cory is an internet guy. He is the most internet guy that ever interneted, and he knows how scams work. I think he had recently written an entire book in which one of his characters was a grifter. But he happened to be traveling, happened to have, some difficulty with his bank. And as a result, he got a call from a scammer pretending to be from his bank, telling him that his credit card number had been stolen. And will you please read back the last 7, not 4 digits of your credit card? And he did it because he was in a panic. He was very busy. He was on vacation. It was Christmas, and it was not unusual for his bank to call him if they saw some sort of weird activity while he was traveling. And in fact, this was like a known problem. Furthermore, the quality of the grifter's English and the grifter's knowledge of the banking system not being very good was not a tell because his bank used a extremely bad customer service that had been outsourced to another country. And so he was used to the idea that somebody from his bank would call him up and then not understand how banking worked or how to pronounce his name.
And in fact, that problem will presumably lessen as voice technology becomes better and everybody can sound more realistic or sound like whoever they want to sound like.
Certainly, but Cory's point was actually the opposite of this, which is that service is so bad that we no longer consider bad service to be a tell.
So let's talk about what people can do to stay safe. If Cory Doctorow can be scammed, how do I prevent my mother from getting scammed? What are the things that I can tell her? What should listeners know about how to avoid this?
Well, first off, stay humble. Don't believe that you are such a smart and magical god, that you will never be targeted and that you could spot every scam from a mile away. But some of the things to watch out for include things like, I'm going to need the last 7 digits of your credit card number. You are only ever going to be asked for the last 4 digits of your credit card number. Pressure to move right away. Anybody who says, like, your account is about to be canceled, there is an emergency, your friend has been kidnapped or is in a hospital, and you need to send money. Anytime somebody asks you to send them money, especially via something like Zelle, which will transfer the money immediately and where you will not be able to, say, go to your credit card company and get the money back, you should be very suspicious. But really, the thing to look out for is pressure. If you push back, if they keep pushing on you, if they don't give you the option of calling back, that is also a tell. Really, the most important thing to look out for is somebody who's not going to take no for an answer.
You've been a very strong advocate of end-to-end encryption across platforms. You've been a deep expert in explaining to the world the weaknesses of some platforms that people think are encrypted. Do you think that as AI data becomes more valuable, companies are going to shift their positions, or the relative strength of the pro-encryption argument will weaken in some of these places?
One of the big problems in AI right now is a tremendous shortage of training data as all of the world's content gets eagerly gobbled up. New content is not being created, and then new content does get created by AI, and then you get a garbage in, garbage out problem. So I think, yes, pressure may exist on some companies. I think it is extremely unlikely to work on, say, Signal, where the entire value add that Signal brings to you is that everything is end-to-end encrypted absolutely every single time without you having to worry about it. And also almost no metadata is stored so that there's almost nothing that they can hand over to any government.
Do you think that norms about privacy in any way are changing because of this explosion in AI the last couple of years?
In privacy, not necessarily. I do think, again, that there is a lot of pressure on people with sort of large troves of human-created data to hand it over in order to train models. But again, we're just running out of that data. And also, the AI companies have only so much money. There's only so much money that they can hand over, and there's only so much data out there that they can hoover up. And if they spend all of their money on the training data, there will be nothing left for developing new models.
Back to the Cory Doctorow scam, presumably there's lots of data about Cory Doctorow. There's lots of stuff from his blog posts. There's lots of stuff that has been hoovered up into AI models. A sophisticated user who's trying to scam him. And the point he made, of course, was that even he fell for a relatively unsophisticated scam. Isn't it possible that the fact that all of this data about all of us has been built into these models could put us at some kind of privacy risk and could make some of the issues we've been talking about worse?
Criminals are only as sophisticated as they have to be. Criminals are lazy. If an easy grift works, why come up with a sophisticated one?
Well, presumably for larger targets, larger sums, you can get a more sophisticated grift at a relatively low cost and relatively quick time. It's worth the effort.
This is one of the reasons why you see a fairly common scam that was going around on Facebook Messenger. Someone would have their account compromised. The compromised account would then send out a message to like friends and family saying, hey, I'm stranded in this place and I need somebody to send me money. And sometimes this would even include some sort of sample of the person's voice, which was almost certainly generated using AI. We also see this kind of grift in pig butchering scams. One of the most common genres of scam out there starts with just randomly connecting to another person using text message or a WhatsApp message or Facebook Messenger message, whatever it is that they're using, and pretending to have the wrong number. You know, I'm so sorry, I owe you this money for this yoga class. And then when they reply, going, oh, hey, you seem nice. Let me talk to you. And then you just sort of get them on the hook until you can slowly pull the money out of them based on what it is that they're looking for and what it is that they respond to. And this is easier to do when you can generate pictures of a desirable person on the fly, or indeed generate video of a desirable person on the fly. And that really keeps people on the hook for longer and makes them more likely to hand over money.
And it's called pig butchering because it's a slow, deliberative process?
It is a slow, deliberate process of getting money out of a pig.
One of the things that I've noticed in other interviews you've given is that you often say that we need to change norms, not laws. Tell me about that.
I spend a lot of time talking to people who look at the world's problems and they say there ought to be a law. And sometimes there ought to be a law. But a lot of the time, the biggest problem is that laws already exist and people break them all the time. What we really need to change, especially when it comes to laws that already exist around rape, around abuse, around misogyny, and things like that, is that we need to change the norms. There are AI services that say, send me a picture of almost always a woman for some reason, and we will produce a picture of what she looks like in her underwear or naked. And you can use this for whatever purpose you want, which surely is not non-consensual image abuse. But a lot of the time when people say, well, these services should not exist, They simply shouldn't exist at all. What I tell people is that the problem is not the service. We need to change the norms. We need to turn to one another when someone is doing something like this and say, that's not cool. What you are doing is not okay. If you are sharing a non-consensual image of your ex naked, this does not bring shame upon your ex. This brings shame upon you.
Changing societal norms is a long process, but changing laws can happen more quickly. So why would one not want to do both? Create strong laws against sharing non-consensual images while you're also trying to change societal norms.
I am fully in favor of strong laws against the sharing of non-consensual images. I think, however, that banning the production of images, for example, if you told people like, well, just shut the AI down. If it's used for bad things all the time, therefore it shouldn't exist. That is the kind of solution that I am opposed to.
Have you seen a communications platform, whether a social media platform or a messaging platform, that has done an effective job balancing the spread of non-consensual images while also maintaining rights to free speech, anonymity, and ease of account creation?
Nope. In fact, one of the biggest problems with using AI or any other kind of automation to recognize image-related abuse is that they frequently mistake several different classes of speech for pornography. One of them is art. It turns out art's got a lot of naked people in it, and it is not non-consensual image abuse. And the other is advertising by or the work of sex workers, often in places where their sex work is in fact perfectly legal. And this makes it much harder for sex workers to do sex work in jurisdictions, again, where what they are doing is fully legal and allowed.
So what is a platform to do in these situations? You should ban non-consensual images if you have absolute certainty that there is one out there, and you should respond to complaints, presumably, but you should also have an extremely high bar so you don't end up catching art or someone advertising perfectly legal sex work.
Yes. And the reason why you don't normally see that is that's really expensive. You need people who understand the context of what they are seeing. And you need people who understand like both the political and the social context and who speak the language. And if you have a platform with like billions of users, that gets really expensive really quickly. Furthermore, the people who are hired to do this kind of review of content are often paid very poorly, treated very poorly. And it is a really disturbing job in which you see only the worst corners of the internet. And they don't get the kind of psychosocial support from their companies that they deserve.
We're running out of time, but let me ask you a question to wrap this up. What is the thing in AI that you are most excited to see in the next year? Is there anything that could be built that would make Eva Galperin particularly delighted in 2025?
Listen, I am a nerd at heart. I want a self-driving car. Unfortunately, I don't think I'm going to be getting them this year. I don't think I'm going to be getting them next year. But man, they would personally make my life and my experience so much easier.
All right. Thank you so much, Eva. It was absolutely wonderful to talk to you. Thank you for all of your insights and all the wonderful points you made.
Thank you so much.
That was my conversation with Eva Galperin, the director of cybersecurity at the Electronic Frontier Foundation. I'm Nicholas Thompson, and you've been listening to The Most Interesting Thing in AI. Join us next week when we speak with Dan Priest, U.S. Chief AI Officer at PwC, about all the various ways the business world is adapting to AI. If you enjoyed what you just heard, like and review it on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening, and help spread the word about our series to more listeners like you.